today you're the director of education at GOATA and co-owner of GLS GOATA. GOATA stands for Greatest of All Time Actions, and the goal is to optimize your movement for pain-free peak performance. Why did this become so interesting to you?
I mean, it really goes back to 2010, 11, going into the draft process. Like I said, I had kind of sharpened, the sword as best I could mentally for the game. But I'm still looking at myself on tape and I'm like, dude, your feet and your arm speed and your arm angles, you don't look as good as the other guys. There was something visual there that, like, I'm not doing something Rodgers is doing, Brady's doing, all these pros at the time. They had quicker releases. They had a better base position, all these things that now make sense to me. I was in search of in 2011. So my thirst for biomechanic knowledge, movement knowledge, came out of a place of necessity to stay on the field and to produce. And then it slowly just kind of branched out to what's really going on here. Like what am I missing from a movement perspective that might be bigger than just, how my quarterback stance looks or my throwing motion. And as I went through that process from really 2011 to 2018, 2019, when I first saw GOATA on Instagram, I was unknowingly going through this sort of process of, as I call it now, emptying the cup. So we all sort of have these cups that are full of what we would call preconceived notions, things we think we know. And I felt that way about human performance. Of course, I know what to do. I've been an athlete. I've been training my body for X amount of years. I've had the best trainers, yada, yada. I know what the truth is. I got it. But as I was challenging the truth unknowingly, because I was looking for ways to improve, I slapped the book down on the table and I was like, your throwing motion shit. Let's go look at it. And it was like uncomfortable to do. But as I'm looking at it, I'm kind of looking around at things that are supposed to make me better at this. And they're all failing. So each year was a little bit of like, that doesn't work. Yeah, that doesn't work. And so by process of elimination, looking at not only, Western sort of, doctrine or philosophy on movement that we're comfortable with, strength and conditioning as we know it today, bodybuilding techniques, calisthenics, movement culture that's just started to bud in the last decade or so, but then also looking at Eastern art, going back and looking at martial arts, looking at the Shaolin monks, looking at yoga, looking at, this isn't really an Eastern art, but it sort of gets lumped into that world, Pilates, breath work, all those things were on the table for me during that 8-year stretch of trying to improve my performance as a professional athlete. And I knew that in that pursuit, I go, whether this knowledge breaks through for me here in this moment, and I actually get to get on the field and change what I've been looking at on tape that I want to change, or it's something that I move on from football, but continue this knowledge, and then I can give this back to the younger generation. I looked at it as like, dude, this thirst for knowledge, this passion, it's going to end up as a win-win, whether it's for me or even better, if I can give this back to young kids, to family members, friends. So let's just keep attacking it. And that was the mentality for those 8 years, is just keep reading books. I don't even know what I'm looking at. Don't even know where I'm going with it. Just let the next book, the next clue take you to the next thing. And just almost, I felt like for those 8 years, I felt like I was just being guided to it. I really felt like there was a faith thing to it. I was like, I'm just going to follow this. Each clue. Like I remember one of the big books that was a huge breakthrough for me that led me to spinal engine theory, which led me to GOATA, was this book I was just poking around on Amazon one night, and it was like just scrolled, and it was like, you like this, you might like this. And I click it. It's like $60. I'm like, man, do I want to spend $60? I'm like, Rick, get it. Just read the book. And so I got it. And that book was just like, boom, punch the doors down. It was Muscles and Meridians by Philip Beach. And I tip my cap to Philip Beach. I've never met him. I'd shake his hand, give him a big hug if I could, because just the way he put this thing together really helped me go, maybe we don't know. Maybe there is more questions that need to be asked. That led me to GOATA. And what was so intriguing about GOATA was that it was two people down in New Orleans. It was Jose Bosch. We called him Coach Gilly. He was the founder. And there was Gary Scheffler, who was really the strength and conditioning side of this. Gilly was the open-minded free thinker that was able to observe this pattern. Gilly used sort of being on the outside of the industry. That's where the real growth comes. So when you see like an industry get disrupted, it's not from inside the industry because everybody's comfortable inside the industry. Usually it's from somebody on the outside. Gilly was that someone on the outside. He had made his money being successful as an entrepreneur. So he was in search of answers for his own back. They were ready to cage his spine, his lumbar, because he had blown out 3 levels of his lumbar spine. They were ready to cage it. So he was looking for answers. He was a golfer. He's like, we use slow motion video to discern the best movement patterns in golf. Why don't I use slow motion video to look at the world's most durable humans and see if maybe they're doing something different with their body than I'm doing with my body? And that's kind of where it all starts, is let's use this new slow motion capabilities that we're starting to get, because the iPad's coming out, the iPhone is in your back pocket. You now have the ability to have slow motion video capabilities inside of the palm of your hand. And this library of video from social media is only expanding, and the quality of video is only getting clearer. So Gilly was kind of looking out into the front of it and saying, everybody is getting more injured as a society, right? Hip replacements, shoulder replacements, back, knees, all that stuff is on the rise. Non-contact injuries, ACLs, Achilles, there's a laundry list. Those are the big 2. Those are increasing, and the average age is getting lower and lower. So we're seeing this happen in younger and younger kids. So Gilly was kind of looking at the stats on it and saying, dude, we're getting more injured. We have this idea that we're at the best we've ever been because the technology is so great and our nutrition is through the roof. But why are the injuries so high? So the questions really started there. And then when I met Gilly and Gary, the greatest thing about them was that they pushed me to look. They didn't just tell me what to think. They were like, go look here, go look here, go look at these examples and think about this movement pattern. And this will show you why there's such a deficiency. And then it was realized when I looked at myself moving, and I was like, oh, you have the symptoms of inefficiency. So of course your throw isn't where it needs to be. It could never be until you clean up these inefficiencies. And so that was what really drew me to GOATA, but it was a long time coming, just kind of pouring out that cup and searching for answers.
Ricky, do you think the inefficiencies that we have today are those due to like the way that society views fitness? Like, hey, you're going to Olympic lift, then you're going to deadlift, then you're going to go do a 100-meter sprint. Like, is that type of fitness why we have those quote unquote inefficiencies today, and like why we are seeing like an uptick in injuries?
Yes, I would argue that it's a big part of that. Not the only part of it, but a big part of it. We also have an issue with the way that we rest. So modern rest has taken liking to the table and the chair, right? It's where we work, it's where we sit, it's where we talk. We spend hours on end in this chair. The book that I quoted, Muscles and Meridians by Philip Beach, his theory was that terrestrial animals are meant to rest on the ground. So he talks about movement and rest being flip sides of the same coin, like left and right. You can't have one without the other. Movement implies rest, rest implies movement. So what he was trying to show us was that these shapes that you see in the resting world, they keep the subsequent movement that will follow tuned. So like a guitar always being tuned and ready to play, your system should always be tuned and ready to play. And it's doing that by how you're just chilling on the ground and resting. It's keeping your lower back and your hips and your ankles in a type of alignment, in a type of relationship where they're not going to fall apart when the movement comes after. We've ruined that. Now we sit in these chairs, we sit at the table. That changes the positions and the postures, which then changes the movement after. But for the training world, the biggest issue that I would say, and this is kind of where we frame things for people, is when you look at the other systems of the body, we have a very specific way that we catalog, diagnose, and treat them. So for instance, your cardiovascular system, they will see that as an integrated system that moves in a cycle, and it moves something in a cycle, right? As I say cardiovascular system, what pops into your mind? You see the veins, you see the highway, you see the heart, you see the blood pumping through it. If I were to say digestive system, same thing. You see the whole system, you see how it's integrated, you see how it moves the food in, moves the food out. pulmonary or respiratory system. You see the whole system, you see it as a cycle, air moves in, air moves out. So there's a cycle, and then there's something that's being moved on that cycle or during that cycle, and that cycle has phases. With the musculoskeletal system, they didn't do this. So they didn't find, as we would say, the healthy blood pressure. Instead, they took a cadaver science approach. So they took this musculoskeletal system, they took a dead version of it, laid it on a table, started cutting it up and saying, this is the gluteus maximus, this is the bicep, this is that. And then as far as the movement of the system goes, somebody else, some doctor's moving that foot, that dead body on a table, and he's going off of each plane of movement. So sagittal, frontal, transverse, the 3 planes of movement, they're moving it themselves and then cataloging these ranges of motion. Then they took that catalog and they said, take it to your Planet Fitness, take it to your gym, train all those ranges of motion, use weight to make them stronger, and then you'll be ready to go and move and you'll be the best version of yourself. Well, that completely misses how systems work inside the body. They work in a cycle, they have specific phases, and they move something inside of that cycle. The musculoskeletal system's cycle is the walk. It's our forward gear. So we're designed to move forward through space. We got a rear wheel drive suspension system. You got this Achilles tendon. You got this larger lower limb for a reason. Eyes in the front, big muscles in the back, rear wheel drive, spring loaded Achilles. We're going forward through space. Everybody knows that the leg cycles, right? The leg cycles when you walk. That cycle is actually and should be repetitive. Now, it is repetitive no matter who you are. The question then becomes, is it a good repetition or a bad repetition? Because how many cycles are you going to get in a day? Thousands upon thousands of forward cycles in your walk, which then gets turned up like a volume dial to a jog, a run, a throw, a swing, a strike, a cut, juke, and jump. So everything that we see as sports boils back down to just this basic forward moving cycle. The problem we have is that our rest has been hijacked, but also our training has been hijacked. That's the idea with GOATA, is that we're saying we missed. We're sorry we missed, but we, the industry as a whole, the way we're training, I'm sorry, but it's processed food. We're now waking up to like, yeah, it's easy, it's accessible, you can get it quickly, and you can get sort of a quick little high from, eating that type of food. You can get that muscle to pop a little bit more, and like the mirror looks a little different, but the long-term effects of processed food are not good. We're trying to show people the long-term effects of some of this stuff that we're doing in the gym based off the slow motion video. It won't hold up. And because of that, that's why you see an increase in injury and joint replacements.
The passion that I hear and feel, man, is as you talk about this, in some ways, I feel like you get more fired up about what you're doing now than, slinging the football around. And that's really cool to hear and to see, like, as we're taping this podcast. I guess with the GOATA system, like, my question is, like, you're an athlete, right? Like, I was a hockey goalie, and like, you want to be flexible, you want to, have explosive power as you're moving across the crease. Like, with the GOATA system, like, if you're staying away from like those Olympic lifts and those kettlebell swings and those sprints and like those like more explosive movements, like within the system, like, are there moves and exercises that would emulate that to better suit how you move as a hockey player? I don't know if that question makes sense.
What you're saying, like, I think that's a normal sort of deduction and a normal question that we get when we propose what I just proposed a second ago. And what's important to realize is that strength isn't bottled up in these specific lifts, right? You could get stronger doing a push-up. You could get stronger doing a pull-up. You could get stronger at anything that you're working at. So strength is relative to the task. My point being, like, if your deadlift is getting bigger, then your deadlift is getting bigger. That the strength of that task you're now accomplishing. But the question you have to ask is, the strength in the deadlift or the strength in the Olympic lift, does it transfer to forward movement? And that's where we kind of take a deep dive into forward versus reverse. So we talk about the analogy of a car. A car is clearly designed to go forward, right? It's all designed for drive gear, but it's nice that you have the reverse gear, right? So you can back out of the driveway, you can back out of the parking spot, you use your reverse gear. But at the end of the day, if you were to look at your driving log, man, 98, 99% of the time, you'd have to be in drive gear, but you do use your reverse. Our bodies, we argue, are similar. We are built for drive gear. We're built for walk, jog, run, throw, swing, strike, cut, juke, jump. We do have a reverse gear. That reverse gear is your lifting engine. So when you stop, you put that spring, you turn that spring into a shovel. So you're built to be heels up going forward. Now you drop the heels into the ground. You essentially become a shovel for a second. And that's okay, because you want to pick this resource up off the ground and you want to take it with you somewhere else. So we're built off of sort of a hunter-gatherer mold where we're walk, jog, run, throw, swing, strike, dead body on the ground, dead animal on the ground, one lifting rep, pick it up, go back into that walk in that jog. What's changed in the lift in the training world is that the lifting is the showcase. So it's all about lift, 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 lift. When you look at the pattern of injury, it resembles the lifting pattern in the gym. And so what we're trying to show people is, yeah, you're getting stronger at your lift, but your lift's got nothing to do with your drive gear. You're trying to go 70 miles an hour on the highway in reverse, and you're wondering why your car is getting in a wreck. It's because it's built to go forward. Just turn around and you can see clearly out the front windshield. So what we're trying to show people is, yes, we can get strength. Yes, we can get speed. Yes, we can get endurance and all those things, but we want to make sure they're happening throughout the system in a pattern that will keep the tissue, that will keep the joint segments healthy. And so we can level up strength, speed, and endurance, but we put durability in front of it. And what's interesting is, if something is durable, you're already implying that it's strong and that it has endurance. But you can have strength and endurance and then fall apart, right? You could have a fragile sort of strength where it doesn't last, it just breaks down. So we focus on durability, and that's made all the difference in how we've kind of changed the way people move and feel about their bodies, is we kind of progress them through our system.
It's interesting, like when you kind of bring up the durability part, because if you have the other aspects, but you don't have that, you literally don't have anything at all.
You have nothing. The best ability is availability. And you've heard it in the hockey world. You know it. You've seen next man up. I've seen next man up. And it's funny because if there's anything that you should be aiming for as a gen pop or as an athlete, is like, just don't get hurt. Just do your best to limit the injury. And I think there is a camp of people that think, dude, injuries are coming, just deal with it. I call BS on that. I call total BS. There's obviously contact injuries, but the injuries that we're talking about are these nonsensical things that happen to us that we have no answer for. Like we talked about with your back. Where does that come from? What is that? That doesn't, you should deal with that, just suck it up? No, why is that happening? It doesn't make any sense as you look at the high level overview of human systems and what they're built for and how we're so resilient. If we're so resilient, then why does my back pop out? Like, why does my back spasm? That makes zero sense. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked there, but I think durability is the lens that you want to attack this thing through. And by us doing that, we've really developed a system that's changing how people look at the way that they want to train their body and train their athletes' bodies.
How do we break through like this idea that society has of what fitness should look like and what you should look like, working out? Because I think that's a challenging piece too. I honestly kind of just fell into that trap when I asked you, well, if I use this system, how am I going to have that explosive, movement? So in a sense, I kind of accidentally fall into that bucket, but I feel like there's such like a stranglehold on, you have to have giant arms and giant legs and a big chest. And I've actually slowly started to unwind out of that because I just want to be able to move. And that's why it's crazy how we're having this conversation now. Cause I was just telling my girlfriend, like, I just want to be able to move like pain-free. Like I want to be fit, but it's kind of like the processed food thing. I want to put good stuff in. I want to be able to move well. I don't want to just be like keeled over, because of the way that I've been treating my body. So,
well, what I would say is our system kind of gives you this outlook. This is what we're talking about when it comes to our progression through the sort of process of rehabbing you, but then also knowing, like you're saying, hey, I do have to have strength and I do have to have speed and I do have to have endurance in some capacity. Maybe other folks have to have it more, but we should all have the capabilities to move freely. So what we do is we progress you from all fours to a single leg. So we essentially go back to child development type of process, and we, as we call them, pivot points, meaning the points of contact in the ground. So if you think about your forward movement in your day-to-day, you really only get one pivot point. There's one point of contact in the ground. The other leg is resetting. So at some point, all your body weight and all your pressure is in that one pivot point. When we want to rehabilitate the way that is going down, we will actually regress to more pivot points. So you start with all fours. You have 6 points of contact. You got your hands, your kneecaps, and your feet. It's a lot easier to disperse your body weight, and it's a lot easier to realign your system. So we start there and we build sort of a vocabulary and sort of some alignment cues and trademarks that we're looking for. And they don't really change. We just create varieties, but we start to remove pivot points. As we are removing pivot points and challenging some of these trademarks that we talk about of durability, you're going to feel yourself get stronger in the spots that you were meant to be stronger. So your lower back should feel like it blows up and gets stronger. Your backside outside tissue, your chest should broaden. Your shoulders will start to get big. So there's a natural aesthetic that you're going to get from training the body in a natural way. As we go through that progression, we eventually get to performance exercises. So we have our version of the hang clean. We have our version of the deadlift. We have our version of the big moments of max neural drive, as we would say, inside of our routine. We just make sure that when we're using that weight, because it's not the weight that's the issue, it's the pattern inside my foot, ankle, hip. That's the issue. And so there's some truth to too much weight is kind of diminishing returns. Anybody that's spent time being a power lifter has been hurt. So if you're going to pursue that avenue of lifting more and more weight, you know that an injury is coming at some point. We've, for some reason, taken that mode and said, let's give it to Saquon Barkley. Let's do this in the NFL. It's like those aren't the same skill sets. The same reason that the strongmen aren't doing, ladder drills and cone juke drills to get ready for their sort of strongman competition is the same reason that, our running backs and cutting athletes shouldn't be doing this heels down heavy lifting. So we have ways to build strength, to build endurance, to build power. They aren't your typical exercises that you're used to. So it does take some time to kind of like wrap your head around what you're doing. But GOATA is one of those systems where like, just get in there and feel it. Just start feeling what it's doing for your body. Notice how you feel different. And then that's kind of the selling point for you, is that you get in there, you feel it, and you're like, okay, I know what I felt like after I did deadlifts and Olympic lifts and burpees. Now just weigh it against how you feel when you do GOATA work. And when people get that, once you get to that point, then it becomes, oh, I see what this guy's talking about. I'm gonna go this route because it feels better.
Ricky, do you feel fulfilled today?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously what we've just been talking about, having a passion for what you do is I think crucial. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like just teaching and coaching, which is really cool. It's what I love to do, about a subject that I'm extremely interested in consistently. I don't fall away from interest in this thing. I'm always looking at it. And then on the other side of it, socially, I have 4 kids, on 8, 6, 4, and a 4-month-old, married. I'm a stone's throw away from my church. My in-laws and my parents are 15 minutes away. All those things make me say yes to the fulfilled thing. It's just kind of very cool to, especially when I was in the NFL, it's so erratic. You're in one city one year, you're in another city the next year, you're away from family, you're starting your own family, but you're away from family. And it's hard to get grounded and kind of really like, and I've been, since 2017, we've been back home in Cleveland, and each year has just been more and more like kind of etching yourself back into the community in various ways. And it's been extremely fulfilling to be back home, to be around family, to grow my own family, to grow a business, and then to kind of give back to my community by, coaching in various opportunities. It's really helped me gain perspective and be very grateful for all the opportunities that I had early on in my life.